Dear colleagues, I would also like to ask you to put on your headsets to be able to follow the meeting and hear the interventions. Before we begin, I would like to inform you that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on our website. Today, we will first hear the presentation of our rapporteur, followed by the remarks from the OSCE Head of Institutions and Chair of the OSCE Human Dimension Committee. After their presentations, we will proceed to a question and answer session dedicated to questions or comments addressed to the rapporteur and our OSCE counterparts. If you wish, they don't. Ring the bell. I think it's fine. Well, I'll start again. So today we will first hear the presentation by our rapporteur, followed by the remarks from the OSCE Head of Institutions and Chair of the OSCE Human Dimension Committee. After their presentations, we will proceed to a question and answer session dedicated to questions or comments addressed to our rapporteur and our OSCE counterparts. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand or your nameplate, and I will call you on accordingly. We will then move to the second part of the meeting, our special debate on safeguarding elections integrity amid hybrid threats and foreign malign influence, and the address by our keynote speaker. Following the keynote address, members who have registered for the speakers list will have the opportunity to intervene during the open debate under agenda item 7. Please note that we currently have 27 speakers registered for the open debate under agenda item 7. As previously communicated by the table office, in accordance with Rule 27.2, the speakers list closed 1 hour ago. Given the strong interest and limited time available, all participants in the open debate are kindly requested to limit their statements to a maximum of 3 minutes. I also ask all speakers to monitor the timer displayed on the screens to help ensure a focused and inclusive discussions. Dear colleagues, I call the Committee on Democracy, Human Rights and Humanitarian Questions to order. As you have seen, the agenda for our meeting has been circulated. I understand that many of us may wish to address recent developments, which I believe can be done within the framework of our planned agenda. We will now proceed with the adoption of the agenda. I see no objections. The agenda is adopted. With that, I will move to agenda item 2, which is remarks by the chair. Dear colleagues, I will keep my remarks brief as we have important contributions ahead from our rapporteur, our OSCE counterparts, and our keynote speaker. Allow me, however, before we begin, to offer a broader reflection. When I was elected chair to this committee at our annual session in Porto last year, we were preparing to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act, a landmark document affirming that democracy, human rights, and fundamental freedoms are integral to our shared security framework within the OSCE region. The goal was clear. This anniversary was intended as a moment of renewed political will, presenting a meaningful opportunity to recommit ourselves to the founding principles of this organization. Yet, less than a year later, these pressures have only intensified. The war in Ukraine continues to inflict immense human suffering and to erode the very principles upon which this organization is founded. Across the region, democratic institutions are being weakened, civic space is shrinking, fundamental freedoms are curtailed. Electoral integrity is challenged, and individuals at risk face heightened violence, intimidation, and repression. These developments not only undermine security within participating states, but also compromise the foundations of the international system and weaken confidence in multilateral cooperation. This year has made that reality unmistakably clear. International organizations, including our own, are facing increasing strain, reflected in growing polarization among participating states and budgetary constraints that limit operational capacity. These pressures are felt particularly acutely within the human dimension, where sustained attention and resources are essential. The combination of democratic decline and the mounting challenges facing international organizations inevitably weakens the broader framework designed to safeguard democracy and human rights. It is precisely under these circumstances that the work of our committee becomes even more vital. Together with my colleagues, Vice Chair Christine Blower and our Rapporteur Karina Odebrink, whom I sincerely thank for their dedication and leadership, we remain committed to advancing the human dimension agenda within our Assembly and beyond, particularly in the face of the challenges confronting us today. We carry out this work by closely monitoring developments, raising key issues, and engaging with delegations to promote dialogue whenever possible. We also collaborate closely with the OSCE autonomous institutions, particularly the ODIHR and the Representative on Freedom of the Media, to ensure that our human dimension efforts are coordinated across the organization and that our parliamentary contributions complement and strengthen the broader institutional work. This contribution was reflected in our participation in the Warsaw Human Dimension Conference last October, where our committee leadership actively engaged on behalf of the Assembly. We gained valuable insights into the implementation of OSCE commitments in the human rights field and took part in meaningful exchanges with the civil society and human rights defenders, an essential and ongoing part of our work. This engagement has also led to joint initiatives such as the side event on electoral matters in Ukraine, co-hosted with ODIHR, and the side event on the role of parliamentarians in ensuring the safety of journalists, organized together with the Office of the Representative on Freedom of the Media, on the margins of the autumn meeting in Istanbul last year. Of course, our cooperation is perhaps most visible in the field of election observation. Last autumn, our Assembly deployed over 80 parliamentary observers to the early parliamentary elections in Kyrgyzstan, supporting ODIHR's work on the ground on election day. Currently, we are working closely together to prepare for upcoming missions, including the deployment to the parliamentary elections in Hungary this April, where I will have the privilege to serve as special coordinator. The Assembly also plans to send a mission to observe the parliamentary elections in my country, in Armenia, in June. These missions clearly demonstrate how we work hand in hand with ODIHR to advance its human rights mandate and to strengthen democratic processes throughout the OSCE region. Similarly, we are committed to working closely with the OSCE governmental structures, and I am pleased that the 2026 Swiss chairmanship has placed a strong emphasis on democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. Switzerland's priorities, including the explicit support for OSCE field operations and election observation, provide a solid foundation for collaboration, and we look forward to contributing our parliamentary perspective to ensure that democracy and human rights remain at the heart of the organization's work. In the same spirit, we closely follow the work of the OSCE Human Dimension Committee, the governmental counterpart to our committee. We are keen to explore how we can further strengthen our cooperation, align our efforts with the committee's 2026 work plan, and ensure strong parliamentary engagement in support of its objectives and activities. These highlights offer only a brief snapshot of the priorities and recent activities of our committee and our Assembly in this field. At the same time, I want to acknowledge the important work of our special representatives who address key issues such as gender equality, youth engagement, combating racism, anti-Semitism, xenophobia and discrimination, as well as political prisoners and human trafficking. Our ad hoc committee on migration and the parliamentary support team for Ukraine also play a crucial role. Together, these efforts reflect the breadth and depth of our work within this committee and the Assembly, and underscore how central human dimension commitments are to everything we do. That said, Given the current climate and the challenges we face, our task is momentous, perhaps greater than it has ever been. And yet, in the midst of these challenges, we must never forget that we speak on behalf of over 1 billion people across the OSCE region. Advancing and safeguarding the commitments on which this organization was founded is not optional. It is a non-negotiable duty. The security and the well-being of millions depend on it, and we can never lose sight of this responsibility. With this in mind, I encourage a meaningful, thoughtful, and constructive discussion today, one that I very much look forward to. Thank you very much. Let us now proceed to agenda item 3, the presentation by the rapporteur. Our rapporteur, Ms. Carina Odebrink, who has been serving in this role since 2024, will now present a preliminary overview of her plans and intentions for her forthcoming report to the 2026 annual session in The Hague. We very much look forward to reading her report in the coming months. Dear Carina, the floor is yours. And I would kindly ask you to keep your remarks approximately to 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Sargis. Dear members, dear colleagues, and distinguished guests, last year we came together with a pivotal moment as we prepared to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act. We approach that milestone not merely as a look back at the past, but as a vital opportunity both to recommit ourselves to and to further develop the principles and values that all participating states have pledged to uphold. 1 year later, I regret to say that we failed to seize that opportunity. Today, democracy and human rights are being challenged on all fronts. This is the core task for our Assembly. Democracy and human rights in the OSCE region and the relevance of our Assembly depend on our willingness to take responsibility and to actively contribute to a world in which people can place their trust. Our winter meeting is traditionally the moment when I, as rapporteur of this committee, outline the priorities and propose thematic areas requiring our sustained attention. Today, however, this task has become more difficult, not because the challenges have lost relevance, but because the very system designed to address them is being questioned. This erosion of democratic values is not confined to one region. It is a global contagion. Our commitment to gender equality, once a cornerstone of progress, is stalling, precisely when it should be accelerating. At the same time, we see a systematic rollback of rights for marginalized groups, including LGBTQI persons, ethnic and religious minorities, and other vulnerable communities across the OSCE region. According to the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, a majority of countries analyzed have experienced a decline in their democracy index. This is a global crisis. When fundamental protections are weakened and support for marginalized groups is withdrawn, dangerous precedents are created. It is deeply concerning that even among those who claim to defend the rule of law, committed leadership is often lacking. I regret that a special representative on gender equality has yet to be appointed by the Swiss chairpersonship. It sends serious and unfortunate signals about priorities, women's rights. Women's rights are not only human rights, but also fundamentally a matter of democracy. Human Rights Watch latest report confirms this grim trend. The rule of the strong risks prevailing as violators encounter fewer constraints. Nowhere is this more evident than in the ongoing war in Ukraine, the Russian aggression on Ukraine, now entering next week its fifth year. Alongside the devastation of armed conflict, we see democratic institutions dismantled, judicial system weakened, elections undermined, and fundamental freedoms restricted. Russia's war crime of abducting Ukrainian children continues and represents one of the gravest human rights violations. The international community must intensify pressure on Russia to ensure the return of these children, every single one. In this context, the work of ODIHR, the representative of freedom of the media and our field operations, is indispensable. The expertise of the OSCE institutions like ODIHR and its director Maria Telalian, whose exemplary leadership and dedication to international law remind us of the standards we must uphold. In uncertain times, institutions like ODIHR serve as a vanguard against authoritarian pressure. They must not be taken for granted, but actively defended. ODIHR needs the full backing of this assembly, not only in words, but through sustained parliamentary engagement. Their election observation missions and human rights work remain essential to building public trust and resilient democracies. We saw principled action when 23 participating states activated the Moscow mechanism in response to worrying developments in Georgia. Reports from respected organizations, including Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, show that political prisoners remain detained in Georgia, as in several other OSCE participating states. Let me be clear. The existence of political prisoners anywhere in the OSCE region is unacceptable. In line with our Assembly's adopted policies, I am happy that the OSCE EPA support the Moscow mechanism and urge full cooperation with its mission. The urgency of this moment cannot be overstated. Emerging from this crisis will require more than what we have achieved so far. As direct representatives of more than 1 billion people, we must rise to the occasion. Our assembly must be a strong and equally vocal voice in defense of our shared commitments, but also a voice that conveys hope and that shows that another and better world is possible. A voice that is clearer, stronger, and more resolute than ever before. There is no way back, only forward. Thank you for your attention, and I'm very much looking forward to your comments and our discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Karin, and we are looking forward to reading your report. And with this, let us proceed with the next agenda item to hear the insights, particularly on how our Assembly can support our organization's human dimension from the OSCE officials present here today. I am very pleased to introduce Ms. Maria Telalian, the Director of the Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. Many of you already know Maria, and under her leadership, we have had the privilege of collaborating closely on activities central to our work, particularly through our joint election observation missions. Maria brings a wealth of experience in international law and diplomacy, and her commitment to the principles we hold dear has been evident throughout our cooperation since she assumed her role as the ODIHR director. We are confident that our continued leadership will further strengthen ODIHR and enhance our shared efforts, and we look forward to further building on our long-standing partnership. Dear Maria, it is a great pleasure to welcome you back to the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, dear Sargis, and thank you for your kind words to me personally and for the human dimension on which our mandate is focused. And I also want to thank the Rapporteur, dear Karina, for your support to our office, to our mandate, to our work, and for your very kind words to me personally. I thank you. Excellencies, honorable members of parliament, ladies and gentlemen, it is a true pleasure to be back at the Parliamentary Assembly winter session and to have the opportunity to address the third committee today. And I would like to express my sincere thanks to President Ponsan-Pietro, Chairperson Kantanian, and the PA Secretariat for this kind invitation. When I addressed this committee in February last year, I expressed a sincere hope that we would soon witness an end to the immense humanitarian crisis unfolding in Ukraine following the invasion by the Russian Federation. Yet another year of suffering and war has passed. The crisis resulting from widespread violence and grave human rights violations continue to grow louder with time. As we mark the 4th anniversary of this brutal war, I stand resolute in my commitment to further advancing ODIHR's engagement and support to Ukraine. Through the regular deployment of monitors across Ukraine, we have to date interviewed more than 700 victims and witnesses of violations. Their long and detailed testimonies form the basis of the 8 interim reports published since February 22, all publicly available on our website. These reports document the horrific ways in which this war manifests itself through discrimination, humiliation, torture, arbitrary detention, sexual violence, and the loss of innocent lives, including those of children and other vulnerable groups. With extensive documentation of enforced disappearances, widespread and systematic torture, and conflict-related sexual violence, the imperative of justice and accountability remains central, not only for the victims, but also for the prospects of a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. ODIHR is preparing to support Ukraine on its democratic path, including through observation of future elections. The office has significantly stepped up cooperation with Ukrainian stakeholders, including through regular visits to Kiev. On election observation, ODIHR's position remains clear and consistent. We stand ready to deploy an observation mission when elections are held. That said, the format, scale, and timing of any mission cannot be predetermined. Strong political and practical support from participating states will be indispensable, including political backing, the secondment of experienced observers suited to challenging environments, flexibility in deployment timelines, and a shared understanding of the financial and duty of care implications. Seconding states will play a crucial role in these preparations. I therefore encourage all states to begin reflecting now on what their potential contributions could look like. With this in mind, I encourage us to continue working closely together to ensure that support to future elections in Ukraine is timely, relevant, and well-structured. The side event, jointly organized in Istanbul last November, demonstrated our collective ability to create meaningful platforms to advance these preparations. This momentum must continue. And of course, Our joint work in observing elections across the OSCE region remains essential. I am grateful for the fruitful cooperation ODIHR enjoys with the Parliamentary Assembly. Our partnership is vital in maintaining the strength and credibility of ODIHR's observation methodology. I also greatly value the Assembly's and individual members' advocacy for follow-up to ODIHR's recommendations. National parliaments play a decisive role in implementing election-related recommendations, and I hope OSCE delegation will continue to take a leading role in this regard. Ladies and gentlemen, turning now to today's topic, I welcome the committee's special debate on election integrity, hybrid threats, and foreign influence. ODIHR has made significant methodological progress in recent years in addressing the spread of disinformation and foreign interference and protecting election integrity, particularly in response to online risks and emerging digital threats. Recent elections in Moldova, Poland, Romania, and other participating states have provided us with first-hand experience in enhancing our observation efforts to these evolving challenges so that we can continue delivering relevant and forward-looking recommendations. Upcoming elections in Hungary and Armenia will surely confirm this dynamic. Your discussions comes therefore at a crucial moment. Foreign interference, increasingly sophisticated and amplified by digital tools and online platforms, has become a persistent feature of the electoral landscape. It poses serious challenges to the integrity, transparency, and public trust upon which democratic elections depend. Disinformation, coordinated inauthentic behavior, hate speech, and the misuse of artificial intelligence are increasingly used to manipulate public debate and distort election processes. Allow me to highlight three key points in this regard. First, foreign interference is not limited to online sphere. While digital platforms amplify its reach, interference can also take the form of illicit financing, opaque campaign support, pressure on diaspora communities, cyber attacks on electoral infrastructure, or attempts to undermine trust in electoral management bodies. A comprehensive response must therefore address both digital and offline vulnerabilities. Second, resilience begins at home. Strong legal frameworks on campaign finance transparency, media pluralism, data protection, and cybersecurity, combined with fully resourced and professional independent oversight institutions and election administrations, are the most effective safeguards against malign influence. Preventive measures are far more effective than reactive ones. Third, responses must fully respect fundamental rights. Efforts to counter disinformation and foreign influence must not undermine freedom of expression, political pluralism, or open public debate. Protection, election, integrity, and safeguarding human rights are mutually reinforcing objectives, not competing ones. In confronting these challenges, we must remain both vigilant and adaptable. The methods of interference evolve rapidly, and so too must our analytical tools and observation approaches. At the same time, our response must remain firmly grounded in ODIHR's mandate and in the well-established principles that guide our election observation methodology: impartiality, independence, transparency, and respect for fundamental freedoms. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, on elections, as in all other areas of our common human dimension, ODIHR and the Parliamentary Assembly, particularly this third committee, must continue to work closely together. I hope these brief remarks will contribute to a meaningful and forward-looking discussion today. The opportunity to address you this afternoon underscores not only the strength of our partnership, but also our shared determination to reinforce it at a time when human dimension must remain crucial, to the ODIHR's and OSCE's comprehensive concept of security. I firmly believe that cooperation with ODIHR and the OSCE should continue to expand and serve as one of the organization's most effective assets in addressing present challenges and strengthening democracy and human rights across the OSCE region. The importance of strong parliaments throughout the OSCE area has rarely been more evident. In times of geopolitical tensions and security crisis, legislatures play a decisive role in holding governments accountable, giving voice to those whose rights are restricted, and shaping political diplomatic responses grounded in democratic principles. How we emerge from current tensions, both within OSCE and within our societies, will depend in large part on the strength, resilience, responsibility of our democratic institutions. I thank you for your attention and continued support, and I look forward to your discussion and reflections. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you for your contribution. I would like to now welcome back Ambassador Jan Batu, the OSCE representative on freedom of the media. Many of you are already familiar with his work, and over the course of his tenure, we have enjoyed close collaboration with his office, including through several joint initiatives focused on press freedom and the safety of journalists. Ambassador Batu brings extensive experience to his role, having previously led both the OSCE mission to Serbia and the OSCE mission to Kosovo. Ambassador, we greatly value the strong partnership between the OSCE and your office. Your guidance and expertise continue to play a crucial role in promoting freedom of expression and media, both fundamental to our shared mission. We look forward to continuing our cooperation with you and your team as we work together to advance this priority. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, dear Sargis. Dear parliamentarians, dear members of the General Committee on Democracy, Human Rights, and Humanitarian Questions, dear Excellencies, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you here today. I do so at a time when democratic institutions across the OSCE region are under escalating pressure, and when the role of journalism and the way politicians relate to journalism has become one of the defining elements of our democratic discourse. Today, I would like to address one issue. Actually, it's a problem that is increasingly widespread and deeply damaging to media freedom, namely the normalization of hostile and hateful rhetoric by politicians against journalists and media, and the responsibility of parliamentarians to actively protect journalism as a public good and a pillar of participatory democracy. Attacks on journalists, ladies and gentlemen, rarely begin with physical violence. They begin with words. When elected officials publicly discredit journalists, portray them as enemies or traitors, or accuse them of deliberately undermining the state, they send a clear and powerful signal. A signal which legitimizes harassment, fuels threats, and creates an environment in which violence against journalists is normalized and even legitimized. This dynamic lies at the core of my mandate as the OSCE representative on freedom of the media. The RFOM was established in November 1997 to observe media developments, provide early warning on violations of freedom of expression, and assist participating states in complying with their OSCE commitments. A central element of this mandate is therefore to respond when the political discourse itself becomes a source of risk for journalists and challenges media freedom. The OSCE commitments in this area, ladies and gentlemen, are clear and they are long-standing. Most recently, Ministerial Council Decision number 3 from 2018 on the safety of journalists reaffirms that participating states have a positive obligation to create an environment in which journalists can perform their work freely and safely without undue interference. The decision recognizes that journalists play a crucial role in democratic societies and condemns threats, intimidation, and violence against them, including those stemming from public rhetoric. Importantly, Decision number 3, 2018 does not only address physical attacks, it underscores principles that are directly relevant to political conduct. The duty of OSCE participating states to prevent threats, to publicly condemn attack on journalists, and to promote tolerance and respect for media freedom, and to ensure accountability when violations do occur. These are not optional aspirations. They are political commitments freely undertaken by all 57 participating states of the OSCE. I would also like to bring to your attention the 2021 Declaration on Politicians and Public Officials and Freedom of Expression by the RFOM and the 3 freedom of expression mandates of the United Nations, the Organization of American States, and the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. This joint declaration denounced the increase in public communications by some politicians and public officials, which are intolerant and divisive, deny established facts, attack journalists and human rights defenders for exercising the right to freedom of expression, and seek to undermine democratic institutions, civic space, media freedom, and human rights, including freedom of expression. Yet today, we see a widening gap between these commitments and political practice. In many contexts, journalists are treated not as legitimate actors within a democratic framework, but rather as adversaries, even as enemies of the state. Legitimate journalistic scrutiny is reframed as hostility. Investigations are framed as acts of sabotage. This rhetoric, ladies and gentlemen, erodes trust in independent media and weakens the public's access to reliable information. The consequences for democracy are profound. When journalists are delegitimized, accountability suffers. When journalists self-censor out of fear, corruption, and abuse of power go unchecked. And when citizens are encouraged to distrust independent, fact-based reporting, the democratic debate itself becomes distorted. This places a particular responsibility on you, our members of parliaments. Parliamentarians shape laws, but they also shape norms. The language used in Parliament, on the campaign trail, and online sets the tone for the public discourse. When MPs engage in or tolerate hate speech against journalists, they undermine the very safeguards that protect democratic oversight. When they protect journalists and highlight their key role in strengthening democracy and the rule of law, then they reinforce the resilience of democratic institutions. OSCE commitments are explicit on this point. Public officials must tolerate a higher degree of criticism than private individuals. And ladies and gentlemen, this is also the view of the European Court of Human Rights. This principle exists to protect the public's right to information, not the comfort of those in power. Journalism is meant to be questioning and critical. That may create discomfort for those in positions of authority and power, but the principle of accountability necessitates that probing questions are asked. We must also recognize that attacks on journalists are not experienced equally. Women journalists, journalists from minority communities, and those reporting on sensitive issues such as corruption, security, migration, or climate issues are disproportionately targeted. Gender-based abuse and coordinated online harassment have become systematic tools of intimidation. Addressing this requires political leadership that is both principled and proactive. Protecting journalists, therefore, goes beyond reacting to individual cases. It requires a clear political commitment to restraint in hostile rhetoric, to public condemnation of abuse, and to legal and institutional frameworks that prevent the misuse and abuse of laws against media. It also requires ensuring that threats and attacks against journalists are investigated impartially, effectively, and without delay. In today's digital environment, these responsibilities are even more acute. Political statements now circulate instantly and are amplified algorithmically. A single hostile remark by a public official can unleash widespread harassment within minutes. In this context, the right to free speech cannot be invoked to justify political irresponsibility. With power comes responsibility, and words can and very often do cause real harm. Let me also add that the media itself has a responsibility in reporting hate speech or derogatory comments. Media and journalists should consistently apply their codes of journalistic ethics. They should not be the microphones or megaphones for political hate speech. Big tech platforms continue to reward engagement, virality, and outrage, often at the expense of accuracy and factual information. These dynamics fuel sensationalism, deepen polarization, and facilitate hatred, including attacks targeting journalists, especially when such narratives are amplified by people in positions of power, such as political leaders. At the same time, AI technologies are accelerating the creation, amplification, and targeting of online violence, harassment, and disinformation. If left unchecked, these tools risk undermining not only the visibility of independent media, but also their viability and the safety of journalists. That is why this year, I am partnering with the Parliamentary Assembly's newly appointed Special Representative on AI, Ms. Federica Onori, and building on my office's recently published policy manual on safeguarding media freedom in the age of big tech platforms and AI, we are today launching a short survey. This questionnaire is designed to better understand your perspectives, your national experiences, and your priorities at the intersection of AI, freedom of expression, and media freedom. The results of this survey will directly inform the next steps in our work. Ms. Onori and I are planning further policy discussions in the coming months, including a webinar on artificial intelligence and information integrity, and a dedicated workshop at the annual session. In order to ensure this work reflects real needs and real challenges, we rely on your experience. I would be very grateful if you would take a few minutes from your busy schedules to complete the questionnaire. And my colleagues will now distribute the QR code, and I hope that you will have the time to take a look at it and respond. Thank you in advance. Reflecting on the challenges discussed today and looking ahead, the question we face is whether our democracies are strong enough to withstand scrutiny. A confident democracy does not attack journalists. It protects them. It understands that media freedom is not an obstacle to governance, but a condition for legitimacy. Media freedom is also a pillar of our security. As I often repeat, there is no security without media freedom. And this is particularly important to remember here, within a security organization such as the OSCE. When journalists are silenced or delegitimized, early warning fails, accountability weakens, and the space for peaceful democratic dialogue shrinks, creating suspicions and vulnerabilities that directly affect our collective security. Parliamentarians are uniquely positioned to turn OSCE commitments into real, actual reality, to demonstrate that defending journalists is about upholding citizens' rights to be informed. In doing so, we contribute to implementing the mandate of the OSCE, strengthen trust in democratic institutions, and reinforce our shared security. Yesterday evening, I returned from Ukraine. I had meetings with Ukrainian journalists about their situation. And this is not the time and place for me to go into detail, but let me say how greatly I respect, and we all should respect, the important work being done by Ukrainian journalists under the most difficult conditions possible. They also need and deserve our support. I look forward to our discussion and to your continued leadership and support in ensuring that journalists across the OSCE region can work freely, safely, and without fear. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'm now pleased to welcome Ambassador Eglantina Germeni to our committee. As chairperson of the Human Dimension Committee of the OSCE Permanent Council, her role is central to fostering dialogue on key human rights, democracy, and rule of law issues among participating states. Ambassador Germeni has served as Albania's permanent representative to the OSCE and other international organizations in Vienna since 2022. She previously held the position of Minister of Urban Development, served in the Albanian parliament, and is an academic whose work has focused on gender equality and women's rights. Dear Ambassador, given that your committee serves our counterpart on the governmental side of the OSCE, we are eager to hear your insights and priorities and would appreciate if you could please keep your remarks to some 8 minutes. The floor is yours, Ambassador, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you also for the very kind words. Distinguished members of Parliament, Excellencies, it is a privilege to address this committee, and I appreciate this opportunity to engage with you in my capacity as Chair of the Human Dimension Committee for 2026. I'm grateful to the Swiss chairpersonship of the OSCE for the confidence placed in Albania and in me personally. I would also like to acknowledge the work of our predecessors, Sweden, Ireland, and Norway, who guided this committee with restraint and resolve through exceptionally difficult years. The human dimension sits at the core of the OSCE comprehensive concept of security. It is not an annex to security. It is its foundation. The commitments agreed in the OSCE, rooted in the Helsinki Final Act, were never intended as abstract declarations. They were meant to guide national policy, inform legislation, and shape institutional practice. In other words, they were meant to live in parliaments as much as in diplomatic chambers. That is why your role matters profoundly. We meet at a time when democratic institutions face pressure across our region. Human rights are increasingly contested. Public trust is fragile. Disinformation spreads faster than deliberation, and Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine continues to generate profound human rights violations and humanitarian consequences that demand sustained attention. In such an environment, disengagement would be at the greatest risk. The Human Dimension Committee itself cannot eliminate political divisions, but it can prevent silence. It can keep commitments visible and implementation under scrutiny. Allow me to briefly outline the orientation of our 2026 program. Our approach is anchored in dialogue, inclusiveness, and implementation. The program was developed through consultations with all participating states, ODIHR, HCNM, RFOM, OSCE Secretariat, and civil society representatives. It reflects both continuity and adaptation to the current realities. Thematic discussions will cover gender equality, with particular attention to political representation of women and men, the rule of law, elections in the digital age, tolerance and non-discrimination, including religious tolerance, freedom of expression, national minorities, violence against women. Gender equality, youth, and education will run as cross-cutting threads throughout the year. As I really recognize the legitimate concern from the rapporteur regarding not appointing a gender special representative from Swiss chairpersonship, I would share this as a concern, and I thank you for saying that. But also, I wanted to ensure you that throughout the work of Swiss chairpersonship, not only through Human Dimension Committee, that gender equality will be and will remain a cross-cutting issue, but also focus on specific topics that we will discuss throughout the year. I would also want to ensure you that through the work of field missions, autonomous institutions like ODIHR, RFOM, RCNM, but especially through also the work of other special representatives, like the one on trafficking of human beings, the one on a civil society representative, but also in the one that is appointed as a special representative on promoting dialogue. I think it will be cross-cutting issue, the gender equality. This is a commitment that we cannot forget. We also foresee a cross-dimensional meeting on anticipating technologies, recognizing that emerging technologies affect all three dimensions of security. We have designed this program to complement existing human dimension events on other OSCE formats, including supplementary human dimension meetings and major human dimension events, while seeking to ensure coherence and avoid duplications. The digital transformation of our societies is reshaping democratic processes at remarkable speed. Electoral integrity today extends well beyond ballot security or vote counting. It encompasses the transparency of campaign financing, the independence of electoral management bodies, the resilience of media environments, the protection of personal data, and citizens' ability to navigate increasingly complex information spaces. Hybrid threats and foreign malign influence exploit precisely these vulnerabilities. They blur the line between internal democratic debate and external interference, amplify social fractures, and seek to erode public trust from within. In that sense, the theme of your special debate later today on safeguarding elections integrity is not only timely, but central to the human dimension agenda. The commitments undertaken within the OSCE, anchored in the Helsinki Final Act and developed through subsequent human dimension documents, remain fully applicable. The challenge before us is implementation under new technological and geopolitical conditions. When the Human Dimension Committee addresses elections in the digital age in 2026, our focus will therefore be on democratic resilience, strengthening institutional safeguards, sharing legislative experiences, reinforcing cooperation with ODIHR, and ensuring that responses to malign influences remain firmly grounded in freedom of expression, political pluralism, and the rule of law. Distinguished parliamentarians will also maintain a standing focus on the human dimension implications of Russia's war against Ukraine. The scale of violations and humanitarian consequences require sustained, structured attention within the OSCE framework and the Human Dimension Committee work. I intend to preserve the Human Dimension Committee as a space for constructive exchange rather than a rhetorical confrontation. Meetings will be structured to maximize delegation participation. Briefers will inform discussion, not substitute for it. OSCE institutions and field operations will be involved closely to ensure that our debates remain grounded in facts and implementation realities. Civil society will remain our key partner. Cooperation with United Nations and the Council of Europe will continue with a view to strengthening complementarity and avoid duplication. We will also maintain the standing agenda item on voluntary reporting. While modest in format, this tool has proven valuable. When participating states present concrete national experiences, peer learning becomes possible. Transparency, even imperfect transparency, builds resilience. Distinguished parliamentarians, there is a natural bridge between the work of the Human Dimension Committee and that of this General Committee. You shape the legislation, you exercise democratic oversight, you translate commitments into enforceable law. You engage directly with citizens whose trust ultimately determines whether institutions endure. You ensure transparency, accountability, and good governance in a democratic system through your monitoring role. As a former parliamentarian, I know that in times of polarization, a parliament can become either an arena of division or a laboratory of democratic resilience. The same choice confronts the OSCE. I would therefore welcome closer exchange between our committee and the Parliamentary Assembly, including through sharing findings, thematic insights, and implementation experiences. Where appropriate, your deliberations and resolutions can enrich our discussions in Vienna and vice versa. The OSCE comprehensive security concept rests on a simple but demanding premise that respect for human dignity strengthens stability, and that democratic accountability enhances security. If that premise weakens, the entire architecture trembles. Albania approaches the chairpersonship of the Human Dimension Committee with a sobriety and determination, not to advance national positions, but to safeguard space for dialogue, not to relitigate disagreements endlessly, but to keep commitments operational. The human dimension is sometimes described as the conscience of the OSCE. Consciences are not always comfortable, but they are necessary. I look forward to working with you throughout 2026 to ensure that our shared commitments remain living instruments rather than archive documents. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Before we move to the second part of our meeting, I would like to ask whether there are any questions or comments for our rapporteur, Director Telalyan, Ambassador Bratu, or Ambassador Germeni. Let me clarify that this question and answer session is strictly limited to remarks related to the presentations we have just heard. Those who have registered for the speakers list for the open debate will be given the floor under agenda item 7, following the special debate and the address by our keynote speaker. For now, if you wish to pose a question or make a comment on the presentations, please raise your hand or your delegation's nameplate, and I will give you the floor. So I see there are a few questions. And the first question is from Nicolas Samharadze from Georgia, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The rapporteur mentioned the initiation of Moscow mechanism, and I wanted to inform you that the mission has already been sent to Georgia and already left Georgia. They had meetings at the highest level, including the Prime Minister, including the Chairman of the Parliament. I also had the pleasure of meeting the experts. So we hope very much that the mission will produce an objective report about the situation in Georgia and will provide a realistic picture of the ongoing situation in Georgia, and also will prove that the initiation of Moscow mechanism vis-a-vis Georgia was a mistake. Secondly, dear rapporteur, you mentioned political prisoners in Georgia, and I want to echo this comment because there is no one in Georgia who is sentenced for political beliefs, and that's what political prisoners mean. Please do not generalize, and if you have anyone in mind, then you should put forward concrete names, because this generalization makes public unaware of who are you referring to as political, would-be political prisoners. The official position of ours, of Georgia, is that there is nobody in Georgia who is sentenced to prison term for political beliefs or for political motivations. And I urge you also to work closely with the Georgian delegation when drafting your report for the annual session. Unfortunately, this did not happen last year, and I hope that we will have cooperation on these matters at least this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Ms. Rosie Winterton from the delegation of United Kingdom. Please, dear colleagues, these are just questions and not the...
Thank you. Thank you. Rosie Winterton from the UK delegation. My questions again are to Karina as rapporteur. The first one is that I would hope that the report could include reference to protecting the human rights of those who are prey to criminal gangs and human trafficking and modern slavery. There's a work going on in the Migration Committee on this, and I've been making the points there. But I do think we require international action if we are going to stop the human rights abuses for those who suffer from human trafficking and modern slavery. Secondly, I also hope that the report could include legislation, whether legislation is necessary, coordinated at international level to combat misinformation and interference with democratic elections. Obviously, that is something that has come from the election monitoring work. But in the UK, there are currently two committees looking at how to prevent misinformation in elections. And I have been referring, and I know my colleague John Whittingdale has been referring, to the work of the OSCE in this area. And I think this would be a very good way of making our national parliaments aware of the need for international cooperation on this and drawing attention to the very good work that the OSCE is doing. And Chair, because I was going to raise these points in the open debate, please, because of the pressure of time, please do withdraw my name from the open debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The next question is from Mr. Artemio Rayo from Spain, please.
Muchas gracias, presidente. Voy a intervenir en español. Mi pregunta es para el embajador Jan Bratu, representante para la libertad de los medios, que en su informe ha hecho referencia de forma monográfica a la libertad de los medios de comunicación, identificada como la prohibición de la censura y la persecución de los profesionales de la información. En definitiva, la protección de los medios de comunicación tradicionales o clásicos. A mí me gustaría conocer su opinión sobre la otra dimensión de la amenaza de la libertad de expresión y del derecho a la información en el mundo actual, que concierne a Internet, a los medios de comunicación y las redes sociales. Y en particular, me gustaría conocer su opinión sobre las acciones a adoptar por la OSCE y por esta Asamblea frente a los oligarcas de Internet, los tecnooligarcas, propietarios billonarios de determinadas empresas de Internet, que influyen de forma decisiva en el derecho a la información, incluso incurriendo en discursos de odio. El ejemplo de Elon Musk en Twitter es evidente. Es un ejercicio de intervención y de injerencia en el debate público al disponer y poseer de una herramienta planetaria y global de enorme impacto. Y esa es mi pregunta y mi interés dirigida al embajador Bratu.
Thank you. And the last question is from Ms. Farah Karimi from the Netherlands. Please, Farah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for great contributions. I have a question for Ms. Telalilian, because first of all, thank you very much for good cooperation with the ODR. We, as members of the OSCE PA, participate in election observations. And normally we are also with quite a large number of parliamentarians. That means actually politicians. But next to us, there are also parliamentarians from PACE, sometimes also from European Parliament. You mentioned actually that how important it is to respect the credibility of election observations and the integrity of election observations. And I couldn't agree more with you. So I would like actually to ask you to reflect, if possible, on instrumentalization of election observations sometimes by politicians, by groups that also participate in election observations, because this is really a huge concern to me. I raised the issue also in Istanbul, and I think this is something that we have to talk about it, and we have to be very transparent about it, because that would at the end actually endanger maybe the integrity of election observation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Karina, I would ask you to briefly address the questions posed to you.
Thank you, Sargis, and thank you for your comments and questions. I will take note of that. And for me, as a rapporteur, it's very important to listen to all, to listen to you as members in this assembly, but also to listen to organizations, civil society, and I will do that as much as I can when I make my report. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Karina. Ambassador Bratu, please.
Thank you, and thank you for the question and the observations by the member of parliament from Spain. You raise very important issues, and we are dealing with and grappling with these issues. Last year, late October, we issued a policy manual on safeguarding media freedom in the age of big tech platforms and AI, where we address the issues that you raise and other issues as well. How do we work with, how do we regulate the social media platforms? And these are, we don't have any answers at the moment, but we are now going to national capitals to discuss with line ministries and those working in participating states on these issues to see how we can move this process forward. I also mentioned that we are working now very closely with your newly appointed special representative on artificial intelligence, Ms. Federica Onuri, and we have a program of activities and events, joint activities and events in the time ahead. There will have to be political agreement on regulation. We have the Digital Services Act within the European Union. There are other approaches to seeking regulation as well. But these are global issues, and we will need to have some kind of, I believe, some kind of global compact on how to deal with the regulation of these issues. But this discussion is urgent, and we need to move ahead as quickly as we can, fully respecting freedom of expression, of course. We do not want censorship, but we have to look at the divisive and damaging aspects of this media environment as well.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And Maria, please.
Thank you, Sargis. Let me first respond to Farah's comments and proposal, because I saw a kind of proposal coming up about institutionalizing our cooperation. Well, as you all know, we observe elections together with many stakeholders, particularly the OSCE PA, but also PACE, the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly, the European Union Parliament. So we do this together with our partners. And This is where our force, our strength lies, because we believe that by coming together and jointly sending a message about these elections, this reinforces the credibility. So we do that. I mean, I don't know what exactly you have in mind, what you mean by instrumentalization, but this cooperation exists. And this is an appeal, actually, that many times we have sent to parliamentarians to be together, because by making joint statements, by sending joint statements and messages, this reinforces our position. And this doesn't give ground to others to say that different messages come for the same elections. You understand how important it is to be united when we observe elections. Of course, we have different mandates and we have different approaches. We are, as ODIHR, we are not a political body. We are independent institutions looking after reinforcing and strengthening the human dimension across the OSCE region. So our role is not political, as I said. It's a role that I would say more technical, because we provide assistance to participating states in order to be in a position to implement OSCE recommendations, and also OSCE commitments. And when it comes to elections, we assist states in order to have a strong legislation in place, and in order to be able to confront all these new challenges, new threats, misinformation, foreign interference, campaign financing, the misuse by states of their national assets. So these are the issues that we are looking very carefully through our observation mission. As you understand, this is a role which is a bit different from the political bodies that observe together with us. But again, it's very important to keep this unity, the voice, the joint voice that we send, and the joint messages that we send, in order for a credible elections and integrity of the election process.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. We now turn to our special debate on safeguarding election integrity amid hybrid threats and foreign malign influence. And I'm very pleased to introduce EU Commissioner Mr. Michael McGrath to our Assembly. Commissioner McGrath assumed the role of EU Commissioner for Democracy, Justice, the Rule of Law and Consumer Protection in 2024. As a member of the College of Commissioners, he contributes to delivering the Commission's overall political priorities. In this role, among many other important responsibilities, he is tasked with strengthening and upholding the rule of law and protecting democracy and fundamental rights. His mandate includes the implementation of the new European Democracy Shield, including efforts to combat disinformation, foreign information manipulation, and interference, as well as working to preserve the fairness and integrity of elections and to protect the safety of political candidates. Prior to assuming his current role, Commissioner McGrath served as Ireland's Minister for Finance and as Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform, and was an elected member of the Irish Parliament from 2007 to 2024. Commissioner McGrath, we are grateful for your presence today and look forward to your insights pertaining to electoral integrity from the perspective of the European Union. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair Kandanyan, for the invitation and for that very warm introduction. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great personal honour to be here before the Parliamentary Assembly of the OSCE this afternoon. This is my first occasion to be visiting the OSCE, and I'm delighted that I'm here to talk about a topic that is close to my own heart, and that of democracy, because, as you said in your introduction, Chair, I did indeed serve as an elected member of the Irish Parliament for over 17 years. And I was delighted when I came into the building today to meet members of the Irish Parliament, many of whom I served with up to a little over a year ago. So democracy is something I hold very dear and precious because it is my lived experience, and I have seen the value of democracy and the way in which, by working together, we can help to solve some of the great challenges that the people that we represent face. I'm also delighted to be here because this is an organisation that has stood at the forefront of promoting peace, freedom and democracy across our continent. For half a century, in different formations, your efforts have reflected a simple but a powerful truth. Democracy is a marathon, not a sprint. It is not a product, it is a process. Each and every campaign and every parliamentary vote is democracy in action. And the day that we begin to get complacent and the day that we begin to take democracy for granted is the day that we begin to lose a grip on the most effective and the most powerful method of governance that there is in the world. Each and every election and every peaceful change of government is a demonstration of how democracy can be renewed. And it is a marathon that we all run together, and a process that we all have to uphold and to reinforce every single day. For nearly 4 long years, the courage and heroism of the people of Ukraine has reminded us that democracy is worth fighting for, as they defend their sovereignty, their territorial integrity, democracy and European future that Putin's Russia is trying but failing to extinguish. We are reminded of the imperative to defend democracy against all efforts to undermine it. After all, Russia's full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine has been accompanied by an information war and hybrid war, and has extended to hybrid attacks across Europe that seek to distort and ultimately undermine our democracies. And this is why we no longer need to look to history to be reminded of what a Europe without democracy would look like. And this is why the European Union will continue to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. But even when we have democracy, it must be free and fair, trusted and credible, resilient to interference, and absent of manipulation. Putting a cross in a ballot box is not just about expressing a personal preference for a political candidate or a political programme. Participating in democracy is renewing our shared commitment to our foundational values and to our way of life by trusting in the processes and institutions that were built to serve us. And this is why the integrity of elections is so fundamental to the social contract that binds each and every democracy. And this is why the election observation missions by the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and ODIHR have been essential to the health and resilience of our European democracies. And today I join you not only to pay tribute to your work, but I do wish to do that, but also to share how the EU plans to confront head-on the main challenges that our European democracies are facing today. And one of those main challenges is safeguarding the integrity of elections in the face of foreign information manipulation, interference and disinformation. We now live in an era where the online space has fallen victim to bots, fake accounts and a sweep of powerful algorithms. Free and fair elections are not only about procedure, they are fundamentally about trust. The trust that every vote counts, the trust that the results will accurately reflect the votes that have been cast, and that trust depends on integrity. But integrity is under attack. Our societies have never been more connected, yet at the same time they seem so polarized today. The public square has moved online, siloing our citizens into echo chambers. Our citizens have never been more flooded with information, yet have never seemed to be more starved of actual facts. Algorithmic amplification and unaccountable platforms now drive public discourse, controlling what citizens do and don't see. And our openness is being leveraged against us, weaponizing our freedoms in order to weaken them. Generative AI spreads deception faster than debunking ever could correct this, and therefore distorting narratives in real time. Our democracies rest on credible elections, and their credibility depends on the resilience of the electoral processes and the integrity of the information space. And this all rests on trust. And as we know, trust, when lost, is all too difficult to restore. Trust cannot be bought. It can only be built over time. It is hard won, but it is easily lost. Across our continent in recent years, we have witnessed a pattern of coordinated campaigns attacking our democracies, cyber attacks against voter registers and election management systems, ransomware against the websites of electoral authorities, information manipulation that suppresses voter turnout by convincing voters that the election is rigged, disinformation campaigns that attack candidates, opaque funding, or straw donors. Last year's elections in Romania and Moldova took place in different contexts and certainly different political landscapes, but they reflected a shared and common reality. As elections approach, hostile actors look for pressure points and then they seek to exploit them. The ODIHR election observation final reports from last year highlighted the sophistication of interference in the Romanian and Moldovan presidential elections. The Moldovan election witnessed networks of thousands of fake accounts and AI generated videos flooding Telegram and TikTok with disinformation. Disinformation campaigns included that a candidate would sell land to foreigners or impose mandatory LGBT propaganda in all schools after EU accession. The Romanian election also served and revealed the scale of both covert and overt threats. First, the existence of massive manipulation operations where hundreds of TikTok influencers were paid to spread coordinated messages. This created the illusion of a grassroots movement, but it was actually an opaquely funded influence campaign. Second, the intensity of cyber attacks, where over 85,000 were reported by national authorities, designed to undermine trust in the voters and indeed in the votes or to discredit the election results. The lessons learned are simple. If we wait until elections are called, we are already too late. When it comes to the integrity of our information space, interference can begin many months before voting day, shaping perceptions long before any ballot is cast. And when it comes to the resilience of our electoral processes, they must be tested so that they can be trusted, because prevention is always better than the cure. This year, 27 elections at various levels take place across 14 member states of the European Union. New EU cybersecurity standards protect the resilience of the electoral infrastructure, and new instruments in the EU's digital rulebook, from the Digital Services Act to the Political Advertising Regulation, protect the integrity of the information space. But just as these threats are becoming more sophisticated, the reality is that so too must our response. The coordinated campaigns of information manipulation, interference, and disinformation that I've described, and the OSCE and ODIHR have identified, serve as a stark reminder that the threats we are facing are indeed real, and we know that they are escalating. This stark reality demands a robust response, and this is why last November, I brought to the European Commission the European Democracy Shield package, which thankfully was adopted by my colleagues. This response cannot be just one of law or policy, but demands the whole of government and a whole of society approach. This echoes what I mentioned earlier about democracy not being an endpoint or a destination, because in truth, our work is never done. It has to be a daily commitment that needs constant nurturing and reinforcement by all of us in the work that we do every day. The Democracy Shield proposes a series of measures to be rolled out this year and next year, grouped in 3 overall priority areas: safeguarding the integrity of the information space, reinforcing our democratic institutions, free and fair elections, and free and independent media, and boosting societal resilience and citizen engagement, because we recognise that the citizen, the individual, is the first and best line of defence against attacks to our democracy. This flagship initiative to support better cooperation and coordination in addressing these threats is the creation of a new European Centre for Democratic Resilience, which will be discussed and launched next week on the margins of the General Affairs Council in Brussels. This centre is about pooling expertise and insight across participating member states, EU institutions, but also candidate countries. Because the reality is that the greater a candidate country gets to becoming a full member of the European Union, the greater the threat and the more intense the challenge that they will face from interference and disinformation. This centre will improve information sharing and operational cooperation to react to these threats, to intensify action against foreign information manipulation, interference and disinformation. We will build on the EU's digital rulebook with a blueprint to counter foreign information manipulation, interference and disinformation. We will bring forward a Digital Services Act, incidents and crisis protocol to prevent and manage major threats in the information space. And we will also reinforce cooperation with signatories of the DSA Code of Conduct on Disinformation, where we want to tackle the demonetization of disinformation and increase the detection and the labelling of AI-generated content, which we know can have a real impact on elections if it comes in the days before an election and it's not clear that the content is indeed AI-generated. Under the shield, our initiatives to strengthen the resilience of our electoral processes rest on three core principles: preparedness, conducting risk assessments and stress tests ahead of elections, and ensuring that the authorities that we trust have the capacity, the training and resources to deliver. Second, protection, safeguarding everything from online voter rolls to physical ballots and implementing clear protocols for rapid incident response. And thirdly, transparency, both in advertising but also in campaigning. Voters have the right to know why they are being targeted, who is paying for it, or whether that message is even authentic or fake. And here, the Shield stresses the importance of the robust implementation of the existing EU digital rulebook, from the DSA to the Political Advertising Regulation and to the European Media Freedom Act. We also will seek to step up cooperation through the European Cooperation Network on Elections, where we bring together all of the member state electoral authorities. We share best practice, we share learnings, we share information about what is happening around the European Union. Our current aims are to deliver a Commission recommendation on safety in politics and a dedicated guide of best practice, because we know that when politicians and their families and candidates are intimidated, are the subject of abuse or indeed threats or actual physical violence, that serves as a deterrent to people becoming involved in politics in the first place. And that is a real threat to our shared democracy. We will also bring forward guidance on fair, transparent, human-centred and responsible use of AI in electoral processes. We will bring forward common work on new ways of political campaigning and funding in politics. And to achieve all of this, we will continue supporting election observation in the member states by international organisations that endorse essential international standards. Here, the OSCE's role is absolutely crucial. And this is why, finally, ladies and gentlemen, our partnership with the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and ODIHR is so essential. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and ODIHR's election observation missions are vital for identifying campaigns of cyber attacks, information manipulation, interference and disinformation. Your work helps establish a democratic baseline across our continent. And we want to build on this synergy, because safeguarding the integrity of our elections and information space is a continuous and a collective effort. Safeguarding election integrity requires vigilance, because complacency is an invitation to interference. Safeguarding election integrity requires cooperation, because the truth is that no individual institution or state can alone see the entire picture. And safeguarding election integrity requires citizens to be engaged, because, as we know, democracy is not a spectator sport. Vigilance, cooperation and engagement. These are all based on trust. And through our collective efforts, we can build that trust. And as you move now on to your special debate, I look forward to hearing from you about how we can continue to build that trust, to safeguard the integrity of elections, and so to protect the future of democracy across our continent. And the final message I would leave with you is that what I see as our collective responsibility, all of us who have the great privilege of living in democratic societies, is that that progress has been hard won. It has been won through the sacrifices of many people over many generations. And I believe that we are duty bound to work together and to ensure that the next generation have the same benefits and get to enjoy the same privilege of living in an open democratic society where they are free to express their opinion, where they are free to exercise their democratic entitlement in free and fair elections, and where their views matter, and where they have a stake in the future of their country, and where they can elect those who they wish to represent them at a local level, at a national level, and indeed at a European level in various elections that take place. So thank you so much for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. I do apologise in advance to the chair because we ran over. I have a flight to catch and I will have to leave. But thank you so much for the opportunity and the best of luck in your ongoing work. And I do hope that we have an opportunity to engage again in the future. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Dear colleague, now we turn to our debate. As many committee members have registered to speak, we will need to manage our time efficiently, and I kindly remind you to limit your intervention to no more than 3 minutes. I now call the first speaker on the list, Baroness Christine Blower from the United Kingdom, Vice Chair of this committee, followed by Mr. Pavel Bartoszek from Iceland. Baroness, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And colleagues and friends, let me first thank you for having elected me Vice Chair of this committee last year in Porto. I am very pleased to have the opportunity to work with our Chair and Rapporteur on the vital work of this committee. As the Chair said in his opening remarks, the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act was the moment for renewed political will. But we all know how difficult this is becoming as our core principles come under attack, as we have heard from our very impressive speakers. However, the leadership of this committee is acutely aware of the needs to work with and on behalf of the 1 billion people across our region. Democratic backsliding is not acceptable. And the erosion of human rights must not pass. Rededication to our purpose and mission is needed. We display it here today, as we will in election observation, in missions, and in protecting, promoting, and reinforcing human rights and gender equality, and in the human dimension, so beautifully described by our speaker as the conscience of the OSCE. As Ms. Odebrink said in her remarks, we hold firm to the belief that another better world is possible. We must work for it, as Michael McGrath has said, every day and with vigilance. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Mr. Pavel Bartoszek from Iceland, followed by Mr. Kamil Aydin from Turkey.
Dear colleagues, we are discussing ways of safeguarding your election integrity against foreign malign interference. I would say that the bombs, drones, and missiles that Russia fires into Ukraine every night are the most clear example and most extreme examples of foreign malign interference. Their intention is simple: to conquer. Now, Russia perversely demands democracy and elections in Ukraine. This is coming from a regime where Boris Nemtsov and Alexei Navalny, opposition leaders who attempted to challenge the status quo through ballot box, ended up dead. This is coming from a regime that organized sham votes on occupied territories of Ukraine with no legitimacy whatsoever. So the hypocrisy is really beyond absurd. To safeguard integrity, we must respect actual will of sovereign peoples. I want to mention our neighbors in Greenland. Last year, Greenlanders went to the polls and formed a government with broad democratic support. That government has been very clear about what they want and even clearer about what they do not want. The Arctic is not a buffet for the strong to pick and choose from. It is home of sovereign people. I urge the OSCPA to send a message during next annual session that we support the self-determination of Greenlandic people and respect the will of their elected government, as well as territorial integrity of all OSCE member states, including the Kingdom of Denmark. Whether in Ukraine or in the High North, territorial integrity and the right of people to choose their own future are fundamental principles which should be defended, not negotiated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Kamil Aydin from Turkey, followed by Mr. Ruslanas Baranovas from Lithuania.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Dear colleagues, I would like to thank interlocutors for their valuable contributions. In the light of what we have heard from the expert speakers so far, I think we can come to a conclusion that election integrity is fundamental to democratic legitimacy. However, democratic processes today are increasingly vulnerable to hybrid threats, including foreign malign influence, disinformation, cyber operations, and digital manipulations. These threats are not only political or technological in nature, they also carry a growing security dimension. We observe that the same digital ecosystems used to interfere in democratic processes are frequently exploited by violent extremist and terrorist actors. Disinformation, algorithmic amplification, and online propaganda contribute not only to electoral distortion, but also to processes of radicalization, particularly among young people. In this regard, safeguarding election integrity and countering violent extremism are becoming increasingly interconnected challenges. Technological advancements, including artificial intelligence and synthetic media, further complicate this landscape. They enhance the scale, speed, and sophistication of manipulation efforts, making societal resilience more critical than ever. Addressing these risks requires a comprehensive approach, strengthening legal safeguards, enhancing cybersecurity capacities, promoting platform accountability, and investing in media and information literacy. Equally important is international cooperation, of course. Hybrid threats transcend borders, and our responses must do the same. Multilateral frameworks such as the OSCE play an essential role in fostering coordination, trust, and shared resilience. In protecting election integrity, we are ultimately protecting democratic stability, public trust, and societal security. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the list is Mr. Ruslanas Baranovas, followed by Mr. Pavlo Frolov from Ukraine. Mr. Baranovas is not in the room. The next speaker is Mr. Pavlo Frolov from Ukraine, followed by Ms. Claudia Friedel from Switzerland.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, Russia cannot defeat the Ukrainian army on the battlefield and instead continue targeting civilians, including children, women, and elderly. Attempts to deprive civilians of heat, water, and electricity during the coldest winter and to freeze people to death are not just acts of terrorism. They constitute genocide against the Ukrainian people. The cost of recovery and reconstruction exceeded €500 billion. It is almost 2 times higher than the total value of all frozen Russian assets in the West. It is also equal to 11 annual pre-war state budget of Ukraine. The figure covers only material damage. It does not include the harm to human life, health, and dignity. In the Ukrainian parliament, we focus on helping those who need it most. This includes 4.5 million IDPs inside Ukraine, 6.9 million war refugees abroad, and 6 million Ukrainians who remain in occupied territories. More than 6 million Ukrainians have lost their homes. To understand the scale, this is roughly the population of Bulgaria. At the same time, much has already been done. Ukraine has become the first country in the world history to launch an international compensation mechanism for war victims before the war has even ended. The agreement was joined not only by Council of Europe members, but also by the United States, Canada, Japan, and the European Union. 45 participants in total. In The Hague, the International Register of Damage for Ukraine has been created. The total number of applicants could reach 10 million. In December, a convention of the establishment of an international claim commission was signed. Strong unity of the democratic world to create the compensation fund and to make the first payments to victims are still required. Support from all OSCE member states at all levels is critically important. Inside Ukraine, we are also doing everything possible to address humanitarian needs. 1 million IDPs continue to receive housing assistance ranging from 40 to 60 euro per month. 150,000 families have received compensation for destroyed or damaged housing. About 170,000 affected people have been accommodated in collective sites. Some programs provide compensation to private households for hosting IDPs and covering utility costs. Preferential mortgage programs for IDPs are also in place. We are conducting a full inventory of all real estate to create a housing register for IDPs, which is funded by UNHCR. IDPs will be able to apply for housing while humanitarian organizations can finance housing solutions. We are working on involving private business in rebuilding housing for victims through public-private partnership on favorable terms. Of course, these measures are not enough. One day of war cost Ukraine 150 million euro. All tax revenue are forced to spend to defense. Social and humanitarian needs are currently financed mainly by our Western partners. But sadly, the world's fatigue with the war in Ukraine is deeply felt. Over the past 3 years, global humanitarian funding for Ukraine has been cut by half. In 2025, Ukraine fell to third place after Palestine and Syria, receiving only 6.6% of total global humanitarian funding. But the need remains critically high. According to the UN, 11 million Ukrainians will need humanitarian assistance in 2025. Before coming here, I appealed to all ambassadors in Ukraine describing the humanitarian catastrophe and asking for urgent help. And today I repeat this request. We urgently need equipment and supply to provide heating, autonomous energy sources, shelters, and basic necessities for civilians. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Claudia Friedel from Switzerland, followed by Mr. Stéphane Demilly from France. The floor is yours, Ms. Friedel.
Sehr geehrter Herr Vorsitzender, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen! Ohne freie, faire und transparente Wahlen gibt es keine Demokratie. Und ohne eigenständige, starke Demokratien gibt es keine nachhaltige Sicherheit. Das hat die Geschichte zur Genüge gezeigt. Das wurde heute auch schon mehrfach erwähnt. Deshalb gehört die Wahlbeobachtung unter der Schirmherrschaft des Büros für demokratische Institutionen und Menschenrechte, ODIHR, zu den zentralen Aufgaben der OSZE. Diese Ansicht teilt auch der Schweizer OSZE-Vorsitz, der alles daran setzen wird, die Wahlbeobachtungsmissionen der ODIHR aufrechtzuerhalten. Sie sind ein greifbarer Ausdruck unseres gemeinsamen Engagements für die Grundsätze von Helsinki, nämlich für die Einhaltung von Rechtsstaatlichkeit und Menschenrechte. Heute stehen diese Errungenschaften immer ausgefeilteren hybriden Bedrohungen gegenüber. Desinformation, Manipulation von Informationen, Cyberangriffe, ja bis hin zu ausländischen Einmischungen untergraben zunehmend das Vertrauen in die Politik und in die Wahlprozesse. Das ist inakzeptabel. Um die Handlungsfähigkeit und die Glaubwürdigkeit der OSZE zu stärken, müssen die zentralen Instrumente zur Förderung der Integrität von Wahlen erhalten und angemessen finanziert werden. Wir dürfen nicht zulassen, dass das demokratische Vertrauen in den Mitgliedstaaten weiter erodiert. Und kein Land muss eine ausländische Einmischung tolerieren. Ich danke Ihnen für die Aufmerksamkeit.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Stéphane Demilly from France, followed by Mr. Gilles Baum from Luxembourg. Mr. Demilly, the floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mes chers collègues, notre Assemblée repose sur des principes fondamentaux. Le respect des droits humains, la souveraineté des États, le dialogue multilatéral et la prévention des conflits. Ces valeurs ne sont pas abstraites, elles sont notre boussole commune dans un monde de plus en plus instable. Or, l'actualité internationale, dominée par des crises majeures, tend trop souvent à reléguer au second plan des situations dramatiques qui perdurent, à commencer par celle des droits de l'homme en Biélorussie. En janvier 2025, la Biélorussie a organisé une élection présidentielle dans un climat de peur, de répression systématique de toute opposition. Malgré quelques libérations individuelles de prisonniers politiques, notamment sous pression internationale, il faut le dire, plus d'1 millier de personnes restent détenues pour des motifs politiques, souvent dans des conditions déplorables, avec mauvais traitements et absence d'accès aux soins. Les autorités continuent d'utiliser des lois anti-extrémistes pour criminaliser les dissidents, les ONG, les journalistes et leurs familles. Dans ce contexte, il est nécessaire de réaffirmer notre appel à la libération immédiate et inconditionnelle de tous les prisonniers politiques. En Moldavie maintenant, l'actualité récente est différente, mais tout aussi critique pour notre ordre démocratique européen. Les élections législatives moldaves de septembre 2025 ont été largement remportées par le parti Action et Solidarité en faveur du maintien d'une trajectoire pro-européenne. Cela constitue une réponse populaire face aux efforts d'ingérence qui visaient à détourner ce scrutin. Cyberattaques, financements illégaux, campagnes de désinformation et tentatives d'ingérence étrangère sont venus saper la confiance dans le processus démocratique. La vigilance doit rester de mise, la Moldavie doit continuer à lutter contre la désinformation, protéger l'indépendance des médias et renforcer l'intégrité de ses institutions démocratiques pour résister aux menaces hybrides persistantes qui pèsent sur sa souveraineté. Enfin, je souhaite exprimer une inquiétude concernant la situation en Géorgie, où les droits de l'opposition et les libertés publiques se détériorent très rapidement. En 2025, des lois restrictives ont été adoptées qui visent notamment à entraver le travail des organisations civiles et des médias indépendants, ainsi que des mesures répressives contre des manifestations pacifiques. Les opposants politiques ont été condamnés sur des bases politiques et la liberté d'expression et d'association est gravement menacée. Des élections locales ont été entachées de répression, de détentions arbitraires et d'une forte utilisation de la force contre des citoyens pourtant pacifiques. Dans ces circonstances, nous devons rappeler que toute perspective d'intégration européenne exige un respect irréductible de l'état de droit et des libertés fondamentales. Mes chers collègues, c'est précisément dans ces moments de tension que notre Assemblée doit affirmer sa voix, défendre ses valeurs et rester fidèle à sa mission, comme l'a très bien rappelé tout à l'heure le commissaire européen McGrath. Le respect des droits humains et des principes démocratiques dans le voisinage de l'Union n'est pas une option, mais un impératif pour la paix, pour la sécurité et la cohésion de notre espace européen. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Gilles Baum from Luxembourg, followed by Ms. Timea Sabo from Hungary. Mr. Baum, the floor is yours.
Esteemed delegates, dear friends, when we speak about safeguarding elections, we speak about the very foundation of democracy. Free, fair and secure elections are indispensable for democratic legitimacy. Without free elections, democracy cannot work. Yet democracy worldwide is under increasing pressure. According to International IDEA's Global State of Democracy 2025 report, at least 94 countries experienced democratic backsliding in 2024. Fundamental pillars such as freedom of the press and freedom of expression are under serious pressure in many parts of the world. At the same time, elections have become prime targets of hybrid attacks and foreign malign intervention. These threats take many different forms and combine cyber attacks against electoral infrastructure, illicit political financing, coordinated disinformation campaigns. Their objective is often not simply to alter results, but to erode trust in democratic institutions and polarize our societies. And yes, we have witnessed such interference within the OSCE region. The OSCE observation mission to Moldova identified unprecedented hybrid threats originating from Russia. I strongly condemn and find it deeply regrettable that within the OSCE region, one state tries to undermine the democratic processes of another. Such actions run counter to the very foundations upon which this organization is built. Safeguarding election integrity therefore requires constant vigilance. It demands robust cybersecurity, transparency in political financing, resilience against disinformation, and international cooperation. In this context, the OSCE's election observation missions remain indispensable for transparency, public confidence, and against interference. Hybrid threats, however, continue to evolve, and we must, in our responses, driven by the need to save our democracies and thus our liberties, stand together and act together. Protecting elections means protecting democracy itself. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Timea Sabo from Hungary, followed by Mr. Kyriakos Hagiani from Cyprus. Ms. Sabo, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a Hungarian opposition MP, I am unfortunately more than suitable to speak about direct foreign influence and threats in Europe. In Hungary, as you all know, Viktor Orban has been the primary example of how to destroy democracies and the rule of law. And as you also all know, and we also all know, he is the puppet of Russian President Vladimir Putin, directly contributing to the weakening of not only Hungary, but the European Union as well. He is widely spreading Russian propaganda for many years, distorting truth and doing everything he can to do whatever Vladimir Putin tells him to do. But Orban's ultimate power didn't happen overnight. We also know that. He started with demolishing the power of the Constitutional Court and then cementing all the institutions of checks and balances, such as the president, the chief prosecutor, the state audit office, and everything else. And above all, he managed to buy up over 1,000 media organizations and shut down the main independent newspapers and portals as well. So he practically managed to demolish all free media and in Hungary in the course of 10 years. And what did Europe and international organizations do? Nothing. Nothing. Europe, the EU, and even OSCE has been watching Orban for 10 years doing this. You all know, we all knew what was happening. And nothing critical happened. Only 3 years ago, the EU finally decided to freeze the funding, and that really hurt Orban. So what I'm trying to say is that above all the lip service and the very kind words that we're all hearing now, we need to step up actual action that are hurting the governments that are trying to influence Europe through Russia. And just to give you a few examples of what's happened in Hungary only in the past few weeks, Prime Minister Viktor Orban called Shell Oil, Erste Bank, and Brussels Hungary's main enemies. And Europe is standing there and doing nothing about this. Budapest Mayor Gergely Karácsony is now facing imprisonment, facing criminal charges for organizing the March demonstration where over 150,000 Hungarians attended, making it the largest anti-government demonstration in Hungary. Also, Orban has been clearly and openly spreading AI-generated videos about his main opponent, clearly influencing the outcome of the election, and no one is saying anything. So we are all here at the OSCE PA.
Thank you.
I know the time's up, but you're coming over to Hungary to observe the election, and the OSCE has been coming to Hungary to observe the election, and Orban is still in power because it's not enough to publish angry reports and saying that the the election is not free and fair. What are the consequences of this? What? I'm sorry, but also Commissioner Mr.
Thank you very much.
said that how important it is to safeguard elections and every vote counts. In Hungary, over 70%
Sorry, but you have to stop.
people are voting.
Time is
I'm
over.
sorry, but I think this is the very
We are
topic of
very
this-
short in time,
this
so
session.
we have to.
I
You have to
understand.
stop.
But if we don't pull our acts together and do something very, very quickly, a lot of other countries will find themselves in the situation of Hungary, and Europe will be dismantled because this is what Putin is doing.
Thank you very
through
much.
Hungary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker on the list is Mr. Kyriakos Hagiani, followed by Mr. Nikolaos Samcharadze from Georgia. Mr. Hagiani, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, the debate on election integrity is taking place in an environment in which Europe is under serious pressure. Across Europe, the political landscape is becoming more divided and unstable. Traditional parties are losing support, and at the same time, we see a clear rise of extreme ideologies. This situation, however, did not appear overnight. It is the result of disinformation and influence campaigns often backed by authoritarian regimes that target not just governments, but also citizens' trust in democracy. When people can no longer know what is true, and when public debate is flooded with misinformation, fake news, and propaganda, elections are no longer truly fair. Moreover, in Southeast Europe, a region familiar with external interference and destabilization, these hybrid threats are often linked to broader geopolitical objectives. In the face of this development, OSCE unity is more important than ever. OSCE must continue to take a clear stand against authoritarian and aggressive leaders wherever they may be. We must be honest with ourselves. I sincerely wonder how credible the OSCE can be when, on the one hand, it rightly condemns Russian aggression and shows unity, yet on the other hand, ignores cases of other equally aggression and shows an authoritarian and aggressive leaderships that violate human rights and the rule of law, imprison opposition leaders, openly support Islamist terrorist organizations such as Hamas, fail to implement sanctions against Russia, instrumentalize migration for political pressure, and directly threaten their European neighbors. It is unacceptable that such regimes are presented as potential democratic partners in the European security architecture. Repeated mistakes damage the OSCE credibility and weaken the message we want to send about democratic resilience. If we truly want to safeguard elections integrity against hybrid threats and malicious foreign interference, we must first ensure our own consistency. Without a unified stance and a clear defense of international law, our democracy will remain vulnerable not only from the outside, but also from within. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hagiani. The next speaker is Mr. Nikolaos Samcharadze from Georgia, followed by Mr. Barry Ward from Ireland. Mr. Samcharadze, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to follow up on Ms. Karimi's proposal. And actually, what she meant with the instrumentalization of the election observation missions is that ODIHR observes the elections together with political bodies. And those political bodies are the European Parliament, Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. And since we already have a vast experience in observing observing parliamentary and presidential elections, We also see that Odir's expertise is very practical. Odir's work is very important. But then the political assemblies or political bodies add their political evaluation to the elections. And then it's a matter of, political taste, whether certain political groups who are in the majority in these observation missions are instrumentalizing their political favor towards one or another, let's say, contestant. And then then the electoral observation missions and their evaluations are politicized. That is exactly what was the reason why, and I also joined her in maybe organizing a conference or a workshop and having a look at how political bodies worked in and during drafting the electoral observation reports in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 elections. And we might find some very interesting conclusions that, some political groups or political bodies or observers are very biased to certain political contestants in this or another country. So this is our basically offer or our suggestion. So maybe in the future we can think of organizing such a workshop or conference and exchange the experiences. And lastly, unfortunately, the French delegation has left, but it's surprising how the facts can be twisted. He mentioned municipal elections. It was the other way around. Actually, it was on the day of municipal elections when some demonstrators attacked the presidential palace with the aim of overthrowing the government. And actually, this was also condemned by this assembly. So I would urge everyone to check facts first before making statements. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Samkharadze. The next speaker is Mr. Barry Ward from Ireland, followed by Ms. Maria Antonio from Greece. Mr. Ward, the floor is
Thank
yours.
you very much, Mr. Chair. We all recognize the importance of democracy, of fair and free elections, and the opportunity to represent the people in our area. It's, in my view, the only way to assess the legitimacy of a government. And I think a democratic and a free and fair election should be a prerequisite for being a member of the international community. Yet we see throughout the world, within and without the OSCE, there are countries that do not respect those basic democratic norms, who face no consequences, and who continue to trade and operate as a member of the global community with impunity and without consequence. One issue, and I agree with what other speakers have said about various countries within the OSCE, including members here. I note, for example, that at a side meeting today, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the opposition leader from Belarus, mentioned the fact that there is not a legitimate delegation here from Belarus. There has not been a free or fair election in Belarus, according to the OSCE, in over 30 years. And yet we continue to have them as members of this parliamentary assembly. Russia itself, only itself, voluntarily withdrew from this assembly, was not removed from this assembly. Now, I, as much as the next person, recognize the value of talking, of being able to sit down with people and to explore differences. But if we are serious about the value of democracy, should we not also be serious about the consequences that should come when there is no respect for democracy, when the rule of law is ignored, when free and fair elections are disregarded? And if we are not willing to stand by that fundamental principle, what is the value of an assembly that is not willing to call out even its own members who fall short of the minimum standards that are required to have a proper democracy? And should we be looking further at ourselves and what we should be doing, including in relation to members of this assembly, in terms of calling out those who don't respect democratic minima? Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Maria Antonio, from Greece, followed by Mr. Artur Hovhannisyan from Armenia. Please, Ms. Antonio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to thank all speakers and participants for this fruitful, interesting session. In this framework, I would like to make a few remarks on the highly significant issue about we are talking about, and I would like to speak about my country, what we do for this very important issue. Greece's strategy to counter disinformation and foreign malign influence is built on complementary pillars. It priorities cybersecurity, particularly the protection of critical infrastructure and electoral processes, and aligns national legislation with the Digital Services Act through law, deciding the Hellenic Telecommunication and Post Commission as national coordinator. Authorities cooperate with online platforms, fact checkers, and trusted flaggers and address illegal and misleading content. Greece also participates in the European Union Rapid Alert System with the Minister of Foreign Affairs as focal point, while promoting transparency in political advertising and safeguards against foreign interference. At the same time, it advanced digital transformation, trustworthy AI, and digital literacy initiatives to strengthen societal resilience. A whole of government approach underpins these efforts, bringing together the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the General Secretary for Communication and Information, the Minister of Digital Convergence, and the National Cybersecurity Authority, the Hybrid Threat Analysis Observatory, and Hellenic Telecommunication and Post Commission, the National Council for Radio and Television, and the Hellenic Police Cyber Crimes Division. To conclude, I will refer to field the best practices. My country has set up an interministerial task force to enhance the safety of journalists, address abusive lawsuits, slaps, and monitor incidents of dimension in ongoing dialogue with media association. Overall, we strongly support an open, free, global, stable, and secure cyberspace where human rights, fundamental freedoms, and rule of law fully apply. Anyway, Greece is the country where democracy was born. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Artur Hovhannisyan from Armenia, followed by Mr. Christoph Slagmulder from Belgium. Mr. Hovhannisyan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Khandanian. Today, dear colleagues, today hybrid interference in electoral processes is no longer a theoretical threat. It has become a practical toolkit used to undermine political stability and weaken trust in democratic institutions. We are speaking about coordinated disinformation campaigns, cyber attacks, the artificial fueling of polarization, and influence operations driven by foreign political interests. These mechanisms become particularly active in the period leading up to elections. In Armenia as well, as elections approach, we are already witnessing such developments in practice. External political actors and affiliated information networks are increasing their activity, generating information noise, attempting to shape the domestic political agenda, weakening public trust and influencing public sentiment. This is not only Armenia's challenge, it is a matter of democratic sovereignty. We must clearly state that democracy requires new tools of protection. It is necessary to strengthen cybersecurity of electoral processes, detect and prevent coordinated disinformation networks, ensure transparency of financial and political influence, and deepen international cooperation to prevent hybrid interference. I'm confident that through cooperation and coordinated efforts, including with the help of election observation missions deployed by our Assembly, democracy in our countries will remain protected. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Christoph Slagmulder from Belgium, followed by Mr. Jurgis Glotins from Latvia. Mr. Slagmulder, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, dear colleagues. Today we are speaking about protecting democracy against threat as any foreign interference. But let us be honest, the greatest threat to citizens' trust at present does not come only from outside, but it also comes from internal developments that weaken national sovereignty. The fight against foreign influence must never become an excuse to restrict freedom of expression within Europe itself. For example, the EU is proposing the so-called European Democracy Shield, yet for many citizens across Europe, this does not feel like a shield, but like an instrument of censorship. It resembles a ministry of truth where algorithms, fact-checkers and bureaucrats decide what remains visible in the so-called democratic debate. When the power of the established elite in Brussels is protected by silencing critical voices, that is not defending democracy, that is actively destroying it. Election integrity is not only about rules and procedures, but about trust. Voters must be able to hear different perspectives and make up their own minds without institutions deciding in advance which opinions are acceptable. Cybersecurity and monitoring are necessary, but they are just treatments for the symptoms. The underlying disease is the disconnect between the establishment and the people. Let's also stop the double standards. Some countries are constantly attacked for making their own choices, while this organization turns a blind eye to real interference, the demographic transformation of our electorate through uncontrolled migration, and the influence of radical ideologies that undermine our constitutional state from within. I therefore call on the OSCE to return to its core value, respect for the sovereignty of nation states. Open border policies and mass naturalizations constitute the ultimate form of electoral manipulation. If you hand out voting rights on a massive scale to people who don't share our values, you shouldn't be surprised when European democracy starts to break down. Across Europe, voters have clearly voiced their concerns about mass migration. When political elites consistently ignore those signals, election integrity is not being defended, it is being undermined from within. This internal undermining of democracy is just as much as a threat as any foreign malign interference, and both has to stop now. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Jurgis Klotins from Latvia, followed by Mr. Zvonimir Troskot from Croatia. Mr. Klotins, the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, the title of our committee includes a notion of human rights. Among all groups which claim the recognition of their rights, grounded in reality or based ideologically, the voice of children is too often too silent. Defense of the rights of children must be a top priority of our committee. Even if OSCE does not have capabilities to directly influence the situation for good, our moral stance and responsibility is significant and needs to be expressed. I thank to the Speaker of Ukraine's Verkhovna Rada, Mr. Ruslan Stefanchuk, who spoke so straightforwardly to us this morning and reminded about Ukrainian children which have been abducted and deported by Russian aggressors. I also thank to Karina Ödebrink and the OSCE Parliamentary Support Team for Ukraine that you have given voice to Ukrainian children by publishing the report on Russia's crimes against Ukrainian children. The suffering of Ukrainian children and families is the loudest cry to be heard by political leaders' conscience, and to continue support Ukraine with everything needed to repel Russia's aggression and increase the pressure of sanctions and to Russia's economy. The suffering of children and families in the war between Hamas terrorists and the Israel Defense Forces is an equal tragedy. For human persons, adult or children are equal in human dignity and value. And in this moral context, in my opinion, European Commission should disregard European Parliament resolution linked to the My Voice, My Choice initiative, for it includes the possible creation of EU-funded financial mechanisms to facilitate access to abortion services across borders of EU member states. Such possible mechanisms would be detrimental to principle of subsidiarity and member state sovereignty, and most importantly, to human dignity and the human rights of those human beings, unborn children, whose voice and cry are not yet heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Zvonimir Troskot from Croatia, followed by Sir John Whittingdale from the UK. Mr. Troskot, the floor is yours.
dear Honorable Chair, dear Honorable colleagues, I will cover the human rights segment just from another angle. When we speak about hybrid threats and foreign malign influence as of today's topic, we often imagine cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, and political interference. But hybrid threats also take quieter forms through environmental harm, opaque cross-border practices, and the erosion of trust in public institutions. I rise today to speak about a part of Europe that is often quiet, rural, and proud. A land of rivers, forests, farming communities, and deep historical dignity. I speak of Lika in Croatia. For years, this region has carried the burden it did not choose. Dangerous waste crossed borders, arriving often at night from European Union cities, ending up near rivers, fields, and villages. Communities were left uninformed, institutions reacted too late, trust was broken. Across Europe, hazardous waste does not disappear, it moves. Too often it moves from powerful European economies to quieter regions with weaker oversight. And now once again, people are being asked to trust, this time when complex industrial and chemical processes are planned in the same vulnerable space. Let me be clear here. This is not a speech against development. This is a speech for human dignity, human rights, transparency, and the rule of law. Europe speaks proudly of the Green Deal. Europe defines lithium and battery materials as strategic resources. Europe tightens rules on plastic waste, electronic waste, and hazardous materials, precisely because they threaten health, water, and long-term security. But green transition that moves environmental risk from powerful European urban centers to quiet rural regions is not green. And a strategic transition that forgets the people on the ground, it's not strategic. In Lika, people live beside rivers that do not forgive such mistakes. They cultivate soil that feeds families. They raise children who will live with the consequences long after political mandates end and who deserve the same protections as any child in Europe. Human rights are not abstract principles. They are lived realities. The right to health, to safe water and information, and the right of communities to know what happens where they live. These are humanitarian issues, human rights issues, and ultimately security issues. Lika and ultimately Croatia is not asking for a privilege here. Lika, ultimately Croatia, is asking for the same standards that Europe promises everywhere. Human rights, full transparency, honest assessments, clear accountability, and decisions that put people first, not last. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is John Whittingdale from the UK, followed by Ms. Lilith Galestian from Armenia.
Thank you, Sargis. Helping to protect the integrity of elections is perhaps one of the most important functions of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. I'm proud to have taken part in observation missions in the US, Bosnia, Kazakhstan, and 3 times in Ukraine at their last elections in 2019, where we saw the enthusiasm of the people of Ukraine to participate in a democratic election. Our involvement in the election, which will come soon in Ukraine, will be of huge importance. But the threat of interference is perhaps greater than ever before. I went to Moldova last year, and we heard about Russian attempts at interference, bribery of electors, something like $39 million spent on paying electors to vote. We heard about the cyber attacks on the Electoral Commission, massive denial of service attacks, and of course there was disinformation. Disinformation is the biggest challenge at the moment. A number of states are responsible. In Taiwan, they identified 45,000 fake social media accounts coming from China. In Iran, there are massive attempts to influence actually UK elections. When the American bombing of Tehran took place, 1,300 social media accounts promoting Scottish independence mysteriously went silent. But of course, it is Russia that is primarily responsible in Europe through the Doppelganger Network, the Social Design Agency. And the best antidote to disinformation is trusted, responsible journalism. That is why protecting the media, as we heard earlier from the representative of the OSCE is so incredibly important. At the moment, there are 485 journalists detained unlawfully around the world. 51 of those are in Russia and 31 in Belarus. I'm proud that the UK has just announced that we will, along with Finland, be taking the chair once again of the Global Media Freedom Coalition. We support media freedom, we support true, proper, resourced journalism through the BBC and our newspapers, and I hope that America too will continue to support through Voice of America and their own support for independent media in all of those countries. Mr. Chair, free and fair elections require a free and fair media, and that is why this debate in this committee is so important.
Thank you, Mr. Whittingdale. The next speaker is Ms. Lilit Galestyan from Armenia, followed by Ms. Özgül Saki from Turkey. Ms. Galestyan, the floor is yours.
Dear colleagues, I would like to draw your urgent attention to two deeply troubling issues of critical importance to Armenia. First, in Baku, Armenian prisoners of war and the former leadership of Nagorno-Karabakh have recently been sentenced to life imprisonment following proceedings that failed to meet basic standards of justice. The OSCE, mandated to address the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, not only failed to prevent this outcome, but remained largely indifferent to these trials. This is not peace building, but failure to demonstrate political will and responsibility. Such inaction undermines confidence in international institutions and weakens respect for the rule of law in the region. Allow me now to turn to the alarming decline of democracy within Armenia itself. We are approaching the 2026 elections under conditions that no longer meet the minimum standards for free and fair democratic competition. The government has become an instrument of political repression. Judicial independence has collapsed with politically motivated verdicts that erode public trust. Opposition leaders, parliamentarians, civil society activists, and even high-ranking clergymen have been arrested and detained on fabricated charges. These individuals fully meet the criteria of political prisoners as defined by the PACE resolution. These are observable realities documented by international organizations who state that Armenia has experienced a decline in electoral democracy, with no meaningful improvement since 2016. Attacks on the Armenian Apostolic Church are most alarming. The Prime Minister himself is demanding the resignation of the Catholicos, undermining the constitutional separation of church and state. Criminal cases initiated against the Catholicos, accompanied by a travel ban. This is in gross violation of freedom of conscience and religion in Armenia. It's imperative that the international community take note of those developments and stand in defense of religious liberty and the democratic principles. As a representative of parliamentary opposition, I remain committed to peaceful political competition, but democracy cannot survive under repression. I therefore call upon the Assembly to monitor developments closely and to uphold the core values of freedom. The people of Armenia deserve elections in which their voice alone determine the country's path. Dear colleagues, your principled engagement is essential to safeguarding the future. Thank you.
The next speaker on the list is Ms. Özgül Saki from Turkey, followed by Mr. Daniel Fassler from Switzerland. Ms. Saki, the floor is yours. I guess. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to share with you all a report prepared by a group of women from Rojava. Last week, the Généalogie Academy has published this comprehensive research report regarding the intensifying attacks in North and East Syria since the beginning of 2026. The report demonstrates with data that the military assaults in the region are not merely for territorial gain, but represent a special war concept directly targeting women, children, and social fabric. Some of the topics in the report are as follows. Deliberate attacks against civilians, unhuman treatment and torture, forced displacement and exile, and also the Aktan prison and the release of ISIS fighters, jihadists, use of Turkish drones. Now I would like to read last sentences of these reports from Rojava. The severity of the attacks on women clearly show that one of the main targets of this war is the gains of the women revolution in North and East Syria. These attacks against women's liberation, the brotherhood of peoples, and a way of life built on ecology and democracy are not only a regional threat, but also a global one. We know without justice, peace is not impossible. Now, I am assured that the war crimes documented in this report are similar across all conflict zones. But we must build a holistic solution without resorting to double standards. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the list is Mr. Daniel Fassler from Switzerland, followed by Mr. Gaya Mamadov from Azerbaijan.
Vorsitzender, geschätzte Kolleginnen und Kollegen, im Jahre 1990 haben sich die Teilnehmerstaaten der OSZE mit dem Dokument von Kopenhagen verpflichtet, in regelmäßigen Abständen freie, faire und rechtsstaatlich korrekte Wahlen durchzuführen. Wir alle wissen, dass sich leider nicht alle OSZE-Staaten immer an diese Pflichten halten, dass ohne stichhaltige Gründe Politiker inhaftiert oder Parteien verboten werden, verstößt gegen die Prinzipien der OSZE. Ebenso die Bevorteilung gewisser Parteien bei der Medienpräsenz oder bei der Finanzierung von Wahlkampagnen. Dies sind altbekannte Probleme. Neue kommen nun aber hinzu. Vor allem die Verbreitung des Internets und von sozialen Medien hat nicht nur positive Seiten. Positiv ist die Stärkung der Meinungsäußerungsfreiheit, negativ hingegen das Risiko, dass Fake News verbreitet werden, die von vielen als Fakten wahrgenommen werden. Mit der künstlichen Intelligenz nehmen die Risiken weiter zu. Wähler können heute beispielsweise nicht mehr sicher sein, ob Reden von Politikern echt sind oder ob diesen kompromittierende Aussagen in den Mund gelegt werden. Die OSZE kann im Rahmen von Wahlbeobachtungsmissionen verdächtige Vorkommnisse festhalten. Sie hat aber nicht die nötigen Instrumente und auch nicht die Kompetenz, solche Vorkommnisse zu untersuchen. Dies ist Sache der jeweiligen Staaten. Die Erfahrungen zeigen aber, dass diese mit den neuen Herausforderungen regelmäßig überfordert sind. Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, das Dokument von Kopenhagen darf nicht zur Makulatur werden. Die OSZE muss daher alles unternehmen, um faire Wahlen zu gewährleisten. Gelingt dies nicht, ist die Demokratie in Gefahr und damit die wichtigste Grundlage der OSZE. Vielen Dank für die Aufmerksamkeit.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Gaya Mamadov from Azerbaijan, followed by Ms. Federica Onori from Italy. Mr. Mamadov, the floor is yours.
Last time my voice was not working. Is it working now, the microphone? Thank you. Mr. Chairman, indeed, hybrid interventions by widespread use of cyber means constitute one of the widely used forms of attacks on political independence of states. The nature of attacks are quite varied. While elections are one of the most vulnerable periods for such attacks, it doesn't limit there. Targeted and multi-layered campaigns to discourage politicians are very much frequent, as European commissioners also refer to this. My country experienced such external attacks from time to time. I wish now also to respond to the statement by my Armenian colleague regarding the rulings of the military court in Baku on some individuals regarding the charges on war crimes, crimes against humanity, and related offenses. For 30 years, Azerbaijan was subjected to illegal occupation by Armenia. I wish here to make clear that we highly value the peace process, the newly gained peace with Armenia, and we are determined to preserve it under any circumstances. But at the same time, we are not going to tolerate attacks on the independence of our judicial system and the very steps that really help reconciliation and justice. More than 20,000 Azerbaijanis died, most of them civilians, on Azerbaijan soil. Nearly 1 million internal displaced persons are unable to return to their homes due to widespread destruction and landmine condemnation. Therefore, the proceedings and rulings of the Baku Military Court represent historic steps toward accountability. Conducted in accordance with law, they possess a strong didactic legality, serve the cause of justice, and contribute to sustainable peace. We are confident that by upholding justice, Azerbaijan has taken a significant step toward lasting peace in the region. Those who question these lawful proceedings lack moral and legal standing to do so. It is particularly painful that such remarks are being made on the anniversary of Khojaly genocide, when 613 civilians were slaughtered in a single night on 25th of February 1992. For the survivors and the families of the victims of war crimes, the court rulings in Baku represent long-awaited recognition, accountability, and step towards closure after decades of silence and impunity. To question these proceedings risk reopening deep wounds and reinforces a sense of injustice that many survivors and a large part of Azerbaijan public have endured so long. We firmly reject those allegations and invite the Assembly, in fact, to applaud the significance of these court's landmark rulings and to support the emerging peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Thank you.
The next speaker on the list is Ms. Federica Honori from Italy, followed by Mr. John Lahart from Ireland. Ms. Honori, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, safeguarding election integrity lies at the heart of the OSCE commitments to democracy, human rights, and rule of law. AI is transforming the information environment in which elections take place. It enables rapid amplification of disinformation, the micro-targeting of voters, and the manipulation of public debate at scale, making interference harder to detect and counter. At the same time, AI can support democratic processes, including strengthening electoral administration and improving early warning against coordinated manipulation. The challenge is therefore not technology itself, but how it is governed. From a parliamentary perspective, 3 principles are essential. 1, existing human rights standards apply fully in the AI-enabled space. Second, human oversight and accountability must remain central. Third, transparency, particularly regarding political advertising and algorithmic amplification, is indispensable for public trust. In this context, I would like to highlight my close cooperation with the OSCE representative on freedom of the media, including work related to the recently launched policy manual on safeguarding media freedom in the age of big tech platforms and artificial intelligence. This provides practical guidance for legislators on addressing the impact of platforms and AI on democratic discourse and media freedom. Building on this, we are launching a joint consultation initiative to gather parliamentarians' priorities and legislative experiences concerning AI, freedom of expression, and media freedom. A questionnaire will be circulated to members, and I warmly encourage you to complete it. Your input will help shape ongoing OSCE discussions and parliamentary exchange in this area. As Special Representative on Artificial Intelligence, I remain committed to ensuring that AI is addressed within our democratic and human rights framework, since we all know that safeguarding election integrity today also means protecting the information space in which democratic choice is formed. Thank you.
Thank you, Federica. The next speaker is Mr.
Thank you,
John
Mr. Chairman.
Lahart from Ireland,
In a
sorry,
previous
followed by Mr.
wave of
Artemi Rayo
European
from
migration.
Spain. Please, Mr. Lahart.
Okay, very good. Apologies, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your patience. In a previous wave of migration in the early noughties, I got to know a Russian person who had migrated to Ireland, and in 2010 they became a citizen and had their first opportunity to vote, and sent me a photograph on their phone. They were very excited to have had their first vote, but they posed the question, why do you allow the use of pencils in the polling station? And I was completely thrown, completely lost by the question. And then the penny dropped. And I remember responding to them, you know, that we're not living in Putin's Russia here. They had a real fear that by using pencils, someone could interfere with your vote and erase your vote. So it demonstrated to me at the time that in Ireland we took our vote for granted. The idea of using pencils was something that had gone back generations and not something that we had ever questioned, but it was something that was not natural or normal for people in other democracies. And there are other examples we could use in relation to that as well. 20 years ago, Ireland experimented with electronic voting, and we piloted electronic voting in 3 constituencies. And the public overwhelmingly rejected the idea of electronic voting because our existing method of voting involves significant oversight, significant public oversight, a huge amount of checks and balances, and visibility of the process at every step of the way. So the public were very much ahead of politicians who at the time thought they were doing the modern thing, adapting to the digital age and bringing our voting process into that age. We spoke about fake news, and one of the things I've noticed more and more is that it's not just malign actors who use the digital media, but there are NGOs and government agents, non-governmental agencies, and with large subscriber lists that spam politicians to death almost on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis, and weaponize normal issues, issuing their subscriber lists with a narrative that is often hidden from the public and to which their subscriber list responds. One of the final points I want to make is that states have obligations also, and there are states that members of this organization maybe don't abide to all these particular rules, and that is that voting needs to be convenient to voters. It needs to facilitate people, for example, who work unusual hours or overnight hours, or who begin work early in the morning and are too tired to vote when they come home in the evening. They need to ensure that polling stations are open at appropriate times, that they're accessible to all users, that they are easily accessible by public transport, that they are open to all those with a stake in their society, including migrants and non-citizens, that they enable people who might be sick to vote and who are, in our case in Ireland, if you're on vacation, for example, you simply cannot vote. But if you're a member of the defence forces or the police force, you can vote by postal ballot. So one size doesn't fit all. And some of the rules that are brought in recently seem to disproportionately affect well-functioning democracies because we want to prevent democratic or attacks on our democratic systems, which are happening in other societies. Thanks, Chair, for
Thank you very much. The next speaker on the list is Mr. Artemi Rayo from Spain, followed by Mr. Terbak Omar from Algeria. Mr. Rayo, please.
Muchas gracias, presidente. La frase más repetida esta tarde está siendo y es que la democracia está amenazada, que está en peligro. Y yo estoy de acuerdo y que hay que salvar la democracia de sus enemigos. Y está en peligro en lo que es más sensible, en la formación de una opinión pública auténticamente libre. Una democracia de calidad requiere y necesita de la libertad en la formación de la opinión pública. Y para defender la democracia es necesario empezar identificando a sus enemigos. Ese es un gran reto. Y coincidiremos también en que a lo largo de la tarde se ha estado focalizando ese riesgo en dos entornos básicos: las injerencias extranjeras y no solo. Hemos tenido el ejemplo de Rumanía, donde ni más ni menos que se anularon unas elecciones, las elecciones presidenciales. Hemos tenido el ejemplo de Moldavia, que también tuvo un riesgo idéntico. Y eso se debió al impacto de la injerencia extranjera precisamente a través de ciberataques en la desinformación. Pero ese riesgo no es hoy solo el que proviene de las injerencias extranjeras. La democracia también está amenazada por otras injerencias, que son las que protagonizan los oligarcas de Internet, la tecnocasta, los tecnócratas, los que intervienen de forma impúdica en el proceso de formación de la opinión pública, los que se benefician, multimillonarios que se benefician de la utilización de algoritmos para hacer un discurso de injerencia política, muchas veces rozando el discurso del odio. Y frente a eso, la política, las democracias tienen que intervenir. Y tienen que intervenir no posibilitando o atribuyéndoles a ellos mismos la capacidad de autogestionarse, de autorregularse, establecer unas reglas genéricas que ellos, si quieren, puedan cumplir. Tiene que intervenir poniéndole límites en la gobernanza de Internet. Como muchos países están siendo ya conscientes que hay que limitar el acceso de los menores a las redes sociales en Internet porque les procuran unos riesgos y unos peligros evidentes, la democracia está sintiendo también esos mismos riesgos y esos peligros, y también va a necesitar de alguna fórmula de limitación en el ejercicio de su poder de estos oligarcas, que nunca será en ningún caso calificable como censura. La libertad de expresión está por encima de esa posibilidad.
Thank you. Thank you. And the last speaker on the list is Mr. Derbak Omar from Algeria.
Monsieur le Président, distingués délégués, dans un contexte international marqué par l'instabilité, la multiplication des conflits et l'érosion de la confiance entre les peuples et les institutions, il devient essentiel de rappeler une évidence trop souvent négligée: il n'existe pas de sécurité durable sans respect effectif des droits de l'homme. La sécurité ne peut être réduite à une approche exclusivement militaire ou répressive. Elle repose avant tout sur la dignité humaine, la justice, l'inclusion et l'état de droit. Les droits de l'homme constituent le premier rempart contre l'extrémisme, la radicalisation et les fractures sociales. Là où les citoyens se sentent respectés, protégés par la loi et associés à la vie publique, les sociétés développent une résilience naturelle face aux crises. À l'inverse, l'injustice, l'exclusion et l'atteinte aux libertés fragilisent la paix et nourrissent l'instabilité. À cet égard, le cas de l'Algérie offre un enseignement significatif. Forte d'une histoire marquée par des épreuves sécuritaires majeures, l'Algérie a tiré une leçon fondamentale. La stabilité réelle ne se construit pas uniquement par la force, mais par la réconciliation, la justice sociale et la restauration de la confiance entre l'État et le citoyen. L'expérience algérienne a démontré qu'une approche globale intégrant sécurité, développement et droits fondamentaux constitue la voie la plus efficace vers une paix durable. Aujourd'hui, les réformes engagées en Algérie traduisent une volonté claire de placer le citoyen au cœur de l'action publique, le renforcement de l'indépendance de la justice, l'élargissement de la liberté, des libertés, la lutte contre la corruption et la promotion de la participation politique sont perçus comme des leviers essentiels de prévention des tensions et de consolidation de la stabilité. Dans cette perspective, les droits économiques et sociaux occupent une place centrale. L'accès à l'emploi, à l'éducation, au logement et aux services publics n'est pas seulement une exigence sociale, mais un facteur déterminant de sécurité humaine. La justice sociale devient ainsi un rempart contre la marginalisation et les discours de radicalisation. En tant que parlementaires, notre responsabilité est majeure. Nous sommes appelés à légiférer, à contrôler l'action publique et à défendre les libertés fondamentales. En remplissant pleinement ce rôle, nous contribuons directement à la prévention des conflits et à la consolidation de la paix dans l'espace commun de l'OSCE, fidèle à son approche globale de la sécurité. En conclusion, la paix ne se décrète pas, elle se construit par l'homme, pour l'homme et avec l'homme. Investir dans les droits de l'homme, c'est investir dans la sécurité collective, la stabilité des États et l'avenir de nos peuples. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, for an engaging and insightful debate. This has been a challenging topic to address, but one that I believe must remain high on our agenda. I see there is no additional business, so I would like to close the meeting. But before that, I want to thank Mr. Ambassador Bartu and Ambassador Germani for staying with us and for their contributions today. I also want to thank Freya from International Secretariat for preparing this meeting and for the support, and also, of course, to our interpreters for interpreting and helping us throughout this meeting. So with this, I hereby close this meeting. Thank you very much.